You're listening to the Transform Your Nutrition podcast with your hosts, Rebecca Heald and Jeff Ash. Our purpose is to help individuals and families transform their relationships with food and develop healthy bodies, minds, and attitudes, all without restriction, guilt, or shame.
So we are live. Thank you for joining me today, both of you. Today we've got a really special live again because we've got a special guest. It's not just Jeff and I today. We've got Jonny Landels and obviously my partner in crime, Jeff, today as well. So super excited to welcome Jonny today. And how are you doing? You having a good day so far?
It's a great day so far, actually. I can't believe it's already midday. I think that's typical for everyone's Monday, isn't it? It escapes from you. But yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me.
Where you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I've got a long week ahead. And then before you know it, Monday's over. And yeah.
Well, before you know it, it's Friday, isn't it? And you're like, wow, where did that go? I don't know if that's just me.
Definitely, absolutely. But, time goes fast when you're doing things you love.
That's true. Very true.
How are you today, Jeff?
Oh, I'm pretty good. It is not noon for me here, as you all know. I'm still getting my morning stuff going here.
To be fair, I only just had my first coffee not long ago, which is a bit slack for me. But
yeah.
Oh wow.
So anybody who is watching, welcome anybody who is joining us. If you're watching the replay, as always, #replay. If you are watching right now, please, even if you've got nothing to say, just say hi, give us a wave so that we know that you are watching. Now, obviously, we're going to be asking Jonny some questions today, asking him to kind of explain what he does and how he can help any of you guys out there, and a little bit about his background and stuff. But if you have any questions at all as we go along, as always, we would be more than happy to answer them, any nutrition, fitness related questions. And we have obviously got another person here to offer another perspective on things, which is great. So you've got 3 for the price of 1 today. So so anyway, let's get started. Jonny, do you want to just introduce yourself, let people know who you are?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name is Jonny. I realise my StreamYard name has me as the microphone nutritionist. That's just my sort of joke of the singing nutritionist, which was a bit of a nickname I coined. And I actually had a piece on BBC Yorkshire not long ago because of the songs I write around sort of nutrition and fitness, purely for the joke of it. But I'm an evidence-based nutritionist, certified nutritionist, and online personal trainer. I run a company called Next Step Nutrition. And we've been going for about 5 years now, dedicated to keeping food and exercise simple and helping make a dent in this obesity epidemic that we've got in the UK as well. So on a one-to-one and group base, we do focus on helping people who have struggled with yo-yo weight loss specifically, particularly people who are more overweight, and helping improve their relationships with food, their behaviors, their habits, that kind of thing. So we do combine a lot of cognitive behavior therapy and behavior change coaching with that. Yeah. And from a corporate wellness perspective, we offer seminars that are entertaining and engaging as opposed to dull, boring, and outdated. So as a background, as an actor, which is where the sort of singing nutritionist comes from.
I didn't realise you had a background in acting. I was just going to say, anybody who isn't already following you, especially on Instagram, your content is just, it's refreshing change to a lot of the other, I think, accounts that are out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, that was my way of kind of pairing those two backgrounds and those two passions together. And therefore, I saw a great avenue for seminars and presenting because it's something I'm really enjoy doing, can do very well, to blow my own trumpet, and therefore, providing this information, which we all know can blow a lot of people's minds when you get into myths of fitness, and actually bringing it back to the basics, but helping them live a balanced lifestyle. That's what I really enjoy doing. And feedback from previous participants have included, it's really nice to lower the bar than the influencers and the magazines portray out there, and actually show people who are time poor, who do have family demands, work demands, and who also want to enjoy chocolate and takeaways and food without feeling guilty, but they want to get great results. It's saying, well, it's helping them reestablish their goals, define what great results mean for them, and show them how to live that balanced lifestyle without guilt and actually getting their results.
Yeah, absolutely. How important would you say that is, that kind of that behavior change and that kind of CBT approach?
It's been a real game changer for us to start including in our coaching practice, because we started off being very much, calorie tracking for everyone, macronutrient tracking for everyone. And that was purely because that was where I found my education and where I found my freedom for my personality. That worked really well for me. But even for myself, I found that if I didn't address my attitude towards food, my relationship with food and exercise, and then the habits that surrounded that, I wasn't going to get very far. Like, I found if I didn't track, I would regress. And I kind of was relying on this method rather than using the education, the awareness to change fundamentally how I acted around food. And that's a lot deeper for a lot of people. Food, you can easily not track your calories because of a reason way beyond the fact that they're not right for you or whatever. And a lot of the time it comes down to the habits and behaviors and our relationship with food that come through years of upbringing, social situations. And you've got to really dig deep and have conversations with people to say, why are you thinking in a certain way? Or you get in this situation, you behave like this. Let's dig into that. Let's see why that is. And it comes down to helping people deal with their problems better, deal with their stress, deal with their boredom, deal with their emotions in a different way other than food. Because a lot of the time we just do that because it's a simple solution, and it's because we've always done.
Learned behavior.
Yeah.
It's addressing the root of what it is actually causing the overeating, undereating, poor relationship with food, whatever it is that needs to change. And you can fight through it by just using some kind of external rules to keep you in line, but that only works for so long. And then if you haven't dealt with the root, that's going to pop up at some point and really take you off track, and then can kind of snowball from there.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
What you said. Sorry, Rebecca.
It's about being aware, isn't it? It's about being aware of those triggers and then being able to kind of adapt those behaviors accordingly.
Yes, because as you said, Jeff, it's external control is something we all seek. And I think at first that works really well, maybe for having some parameters. It's like having stabilizers on a bike when you're a kid learning to ride a bike, or you have a driving instructor to help you drive a car and you stay in first gear and stay in a closed car park. You don't go out onto the motorway at 70 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. You're not even allowed to do that until you've passed your test, as we know in Britain. Probably a bit different to you guys in America, Jeff, I'm not sure. But we have these parameters and external control for a while, and then they get released. And I think it's the same with any diet or any approach or any method, anything. It's like, let's put some external parameters in place so you feel an element of success. And then through that, let's talk about, as you said, Rebecca, learned behaviors. And as you said there, Jeff, that underlying relationship with food that has got you there in the first place. And I think that's what I found difficult, is walking the line between what are very weight neutral approaches to food in terms of like mindfulness, mindful eating, intuitive eating, but saying it is still okay to lose fat, especially if you're in a position where it will improve your health, but not potentially to the extreme of the fitness professionals and the influencers and the magazines, which portray washboard abs and shredded glutes as like the pinnacle of health and fitness. Because for everyday men and women, it's not necessary, and there's a big disalign there. So it's not that no one should diet, but there's an in between that I don't think is talked about enough.
Yeah, you're right there, and I think it's also about, and there can be this confusion, isn't it? Because I think very often it's even when there are people that can't let go of the idea that they need to diet and they need to lose weight, very often it's about actually they need probably to think about repairing or healing their relationship with food and their body and themselves first, and I think that's often it, because for a lot, and this isn't, I think what we need to kind of really point out here is that everybody is individual. Everybody has a different experience. Everybody has a different background. Everybody has, different things that need to be taken into consideration. And I think But one of the things I found a lot with a lot of my clients is that, often when they've been stuck in a diet cycle for so long, been yo-yoing, they need to kind of almost move away from that for a short period in order, or, I say short period, it depends on the individual, but they need to maybe do some work on, relearning to listen to what their body is telling them again, etc. And then once they've rebuilt that trust in their own bodies and that respect for themselves, then it's much easier to then maybe, look at how you can maybe want to track calories or maybe want to kind of adapt your eating regime. But sometimes if you're trying to do that alongside beating yourself up and having poor self-esteem and, being really stuck in that negative cycle, for me, it just perpetuates. Does that make sense?
It's a brilliant comment, Rebecca. Yeah. Sorry, Jeff. I think you had something to say too.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, just the same thing you guys are talking about there. It's that going into the root of the issue and dealing with that, and often it's putting the goal of weight loss. I think probably almost every one of our clients that comes to us is coming for weight loss. You occasionally get the muscle gain person or the person that's just, I just want to be healthier and I don't really care what my weight does. But that's not the typical. And so sometimes it's a matter of really helping them to try and put that goal of changes in the scale number on the back burner and say, hey, we'll get there. Well, one of the ways that I like to put it for people is I want to help you get into the body that's right for you. Mm-hmm. And that may look different than when you're coming in. You may be saying, okay, here's a picture of what my ideal is. And my thought is, okay, maybe that is the right body for you, but it may not be. And I would help you get to where it's going to be a comfortable place to be, something you can maintain, something you can feel successful, something where you feel comfortable in your own skin and you're able to do all the things that you want. And often I find that that's a really freeing kind of a perspective for a lot of people, especially if they've been on that yo-yo cycle up and down all over the place. Because, when you start to ask them those questions about, hey, how do you feel when you jump on the scale on Monday morning and it's up 2 pounds, how do you feel about that? And, and as we know, that hardly indicates really anything when the scale changes a couple pounds up or down. It really is, on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't mean a whole lot.
No, but you're right. People get caught in that pretty badly.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, you've both made great points there of this idea of putting weight loss on the back burner because that is what everyone thinks that they want, because that's what's portrayed. And that's why I said that there needs to be a middle ground between people who would benefit from losing body fat and people who think they need to lose body fat to be better or healthier or happier, when actually that might not be what's going on. And repairing that relationship with food at the same time or first, because it's a case of, you're going to see the scale jump up 1 to 2 pounds, Jeff. And as you said, we know that that's not a big deal. And no matter how much we portray that out, I could create a piece of content about body weight once a week, but people will still freak out about it because it's so ingrained that is the metric of success that they want to be seeing going in the right direction. And the biggest problem with that is that everything could be going right in terms of their behaviors, even in terms of measures. They could be moving in the right direction and they could have lost body fat, but because the scale goes up for whatever reason, they think they haven't, and then sabotage mode. And it's a horrific cycle. It's really sad.
Yeah. And go on, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to say that's one of the questions that I'll often ask my clients on a regular basis is, if the scale went down, would that change your behavior? Or if it goes up or doesn't go up, would that change what your plan is going forward? And I'll ask them, do you feel like we have a solid plan of action and that you're adhering to that plan of action really well? And they'll say, yeah, I really do feel like I'm doing it. Then what's the scale going to tell you? Is that going to make you either panic and then try and restrict, which we know what happens when you try to overly restrict your calories. It usually backfires on you and that kind of thing, especially long term. And so that's one of the questions that I like to really ask them regularly if they're out. I try and get mine to avoid the scale a lot. as much as possible. Not to fear it, but to say, hey, do you really need to know what scale is saying right now, because you're doing so well and just making these changes that are really going to set the foundation for making that progress that you want.
And I think as well, it's about, and you said, is it going to change your behaviors? I think that's a big one. And it's also, is it going to change you? Because the thing is that what the big thing that a lot of the clients that I am working with struggle with is detaching their self-worth from the scales. Like they feel that if they lose weight, they're going to be, a better person, or they're going to be more successful, or somebody's going to love them more. And as we know, that's not how it works. But when somebody is, and this is how I can, because it is difficult, isn't it? Because it's, like you said before, everybody is different and everybody needs a different approach. And even when we know, say, somebody needs to follow an intuitive eating approach or a mindful eating, again, even that doesn't look straightforward for anybody, does it? Just like, there is no, I kind of guess there's no one straight path for anybody. But I think for me, if somebody has really, if their self-esteem is so wrapped up in their weight, then, really kind of, focusing on weight loss. And weight loss may happen though, because the thing is that when you begin to heal your relationship with food, it's not, when I work with clients, I'm not saying, right, you need to go out and eat all of the chocolate and the crisps in order to feel good. No, of course, that's the complete opposite of what I'm trying to get people to do, because we all know, we are, all three of us, we are evidence-based trained. We know exactly how food affects our body, and we know, as well as our mind, and we know that when we're eating well, we're going to feel good. Okay. But it's, in order to be able to do that consistently and in the long term, you have to have a healthy relationship with food, and you have to have a healthy relationship. And that doesn't mean a healthy relationship with yourself and your body. And that doesn't mean you have to love your body. This is something that the ladies on my group program are struggling with. It's like, I can't get my head around how I'm going to love my body. And I'm like, you don't have to. It's not about loving your body, but it's about respecting it. It's about honoring it. Because if you don't do that, then you are going to go, you're going to yo-yo. You're going to be going from one extreme to the other, where you're either being really, really strict and really good, or you're just, like you say, going into self-sabotage mode. And neither end of that spectrum is showing your body respect, is it?
No. And it's important to really clarify then, as you said, Jeff, about like the goal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What really is the goal? And are they moving more towards that? Because people put weight loss on this pinnacle.
Right.
And it's like, but when you actually get into it, they say things like that, Rebecca, like, I want to feel better. I want to perform better at work. I want to be able to go out for a meal and not worry about what I'm eating. And then you've got to say, well, they're very different things to just wanting weight loss. Yeah. And Rebecca, you made a great point there of when we use weight neutral strategies, a lot of the time weight loss can happen as a byproduct. And I find that really fascinating, because it's taking the emphasis away from the need to lose weight. And the emphasis instead becomes, am I eating what I really want at this moment? Am I eating for the right reason? Or is it because I'm bored or stressed or emotional? Is there a better way for me to deal with that emotion? And then, okay, am I eating slowly? Am I chewing my food? Am I enjoying it? And have I had enough? Because I did a mindful eating challenge. And there was one woman who took to it like a duck to water, because she was already really active. She knew about healthy diet. She prepared her food. She had all of these great healthy strategies. But what she would do is just pick mindlessly, sabotage herself and overdo it when she went out to eat or on the weekend, because she had this thought of it being bad. And as soon as she started applying eating slowly and eating distraction free and stopping at, satisfaction rather than stuffed, the weight just started to come off of her. And she was like, I'm not even focusing on weight loss. I'm just focusing on enjoying my food more. And as you said, not loving her body, but respecting it. So giving it what it needed and wanted rather than what the emotions wanted. And the magic started to flow. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how do you incorporate your CBT in that process? So is that something that you found to be really helpful in getting people to maybe shift their mindset around weight loss and to buy into this idea of changing that, of working on the foundations, the root cause of these issues, rather than weight loss as the goal?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because a lot of the time you've got to use journals and sheets and things, and it requires a bit of reflection, maybe actually writing things down. So it's got to work for the person. right? So for more my emotional clients, or more the people who are deep thinkers and like journaling, it's more of a method that is used. Whereas people who are more like analytical, data driven, that's probably more where tracking and other things used. So I do tend to work what's best for the person. Like some people you'll ask like, oh, how are you feeling today? Like, fine. And then other people are like, oh, I could, let's go into detail. And it's okay. And I find myself working more and more with people like that because that's how I am. And I think that's a key thing of finding a personality you gel with. So with a lot of people, Jeff, what we'll do is use things like thought challenging questionnaires, or we'll use food journals, but that require them to talk about their behaviors. So it's not a case of like, write this food journal down and make sure you're hitting this many calories. It's write your food journal down and then tell me how you felt before, during, and after you ate it. Tell me whether you ate to 80% full. Tell me whether, 2 hours later you were feeling snacky. Okay, right. You've got these cravings at these times. Why is that? Yeah. Like, what can you journal every time you have a craving? So we've got a craving diary. We've got an 80% full journal. We've got a hunger game sheet, which isn't about, getting into a field of strangers and trying to murder them all. It's about saying, and hopefully people get that joke. It's about playing at this game of how hungry am I really on a scale of 1 to 10, and is something else going on here? And that requires people to fill it out and really sit down and become aware of their thoughts and how that might manifest itself into hunger and feelings for food. Because as you mentioned quite a bit before, Rebecca, this learned behavior, it comes from childhood, right? It comes from seeing how your parents acted around food. How do your friends act around food? Did you get taken to McDonald's when you were a good boy or girl? And were you given ice cream when you were dumped by the popular kid in school? Yeah. Because all of those things then formulate into you. And were you forced to finish a plate when you weren't hungry?
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Because there are kids starving in Africa that will never see the broccoli left on your plate.
Oh, yeah. Do you know something though, Jonny? I said this the other day about how I literally fell into that the other day. I think I'd made dinner and the kids refused to eat it, and I put it up my face, and I think it actually came out of my mouth. I actually said something like, how expensive that food is, or something like that. And then the kids were like, what? And I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine if you don't like it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. We'll just put it in the fridge.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. I don't. And it's funny because Leo did say yesterday. Actually, he was like, "You don't force me to eat anything, Mummy, but you do encourage me." And but even like us, as we're doing this day in, day out. I'm living it with my kids, and still, all the things that I heard as a child are still there. They are still there, and sometimes they'll pop up, but. I just got curious about it, and I said to the kids, "Oh, where did that come from?" "Oh, that's what Nonna used to say to Mummy when she was little, but it's okay." And it's just so all those things are really deeply ingrained, and it's not as if and you will still get triggered. You can't suddenly just eradicate those triggers, but it's about how you then cope with those triggers, isn't it? And it's how you can change those behaviours related to those triggers.
Yes, exactly. And to further on, Jeff, from what you said, Rebecca, I love how you caught yourself in the moment of saying that as well, because that's a key task, is that like noticing it and actively naming it, because it's that case of, oh, right, okay, that's interesting. And it wasn't judgmental. It was that must be because of this. Yeah. And that's what we bring in with clients, is like, we're not judging the food you're eating. We're not saying like, oh, because people do that too much. They're like, oh, I'm a bad person because I ate chocolate. Yeah. And you're like, why? Like, oh, because it's bad for me. And you're like, why is that? And they're like, well, because, and then they thought, you're like, what are the ingredients in a chocolate bar? Like, okay, milk, cocoa powder, some butter and sugar, and maybe a few other things. You're like, all right, so you've got pretty natural ingredients there, but they combine together and they make something delicious. And when you walk them through it, it's challenging those negative thoughts and then replacing them with something else. Because a lot of people's disordered eating comes from negative thought patterns around food and fitness that need to be challenged and replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's a huge part as well of the work that I think Jeff and I both do with our clients. Would you agree, Jeff?
Yeah, definitely. And what you said there, I think that's something that people are often surprised to hear from a nutritionist, is that they expect to be given a series of foods that they are allowed to eat or that they should eat, and then a series of foods that they need to make sure that they eat in moderation or very little of this. and the emphasis is on good versus either bad or not so good. You hear the message is often presented as, oh, eat what you enjoy, just not too much of it. And so, it's kind of, there's still the little, those little messages in there that there is a distinction between good food that's good for you and bad food that really as your nutritionist, I'll tolerate you eating a little bit of it. And that's kind of the message that I think a lot of people get. And they're often surprised to hear that you when you start to really listen to how your body is accepting these different foods and how you feel, and kind of what you were talking about, really digging down deep and asking those questions and thinking about it, you find that the quote unquote healthy foods tend to make you feel better. When you don't get enough fiber, you don't feel so good in the morning when you're on the toilet trying to go. It's not the most pleasant. Or when you eat certain things that go in the opposite direction, that's not such a pleasant experience. And then each of us is different too. Some of us have maybe some kind of a medical condition where certain foods cause problems, and for us as an individual. And so for me, there may be foods that are not particularly great for me, but it actually may be something that is very nutrient dense and healthy as a food. But because of me as a unique individual, I need to kind of dig down and find out how those things make me feel, and then honor that. Kind of what Rebecca was saying earlier, honoring our body and honoring the way it feels and the needs that it has. And
pay attention to how it communicates with us.
Right.
But this is the thing, and when people are constantly trying to force themselves into a certain way, and I think the other thing is that when people do begin to listen to their bodies and listen to how their bodies communicate with them, they will probably eat in a way that they've been trying to do, or that XYZ diet has tried to tell them to do for so long, but they're doing it from a completely different place. And this is what so many of my clients will say to me, I'm eating so much better, but because I want to, not because my diet rules are telling me I need to. I'm listening to what my body's saying, and I'm listening to how it's communicating. And I love, and about this, also about developing emotional intelligence, which is, I think you touched on there as well, Jonny, when you're talking about how, being accepting, acknowledging the thoughts and things like that, and how you're feeling, and doing it. I often look at like the emotional wheel with clients as well, because it's about naming those. You mentioned about obviously naming those thoughts and things as they crop up, but it's also about naming those emotions and those feelings as well as they crop up, so that you begin to unpick and understand where they're coming from, rather than constantly beating yourself up because you didn't have enough willpower, or you couldn't stick to this, or you couldn't do that. Because that just ends up, well, we all know where that ends up, don't we?
Exactly, yeah. And it's things like this that people, it takes time to kind of drill in because of the messages that are fed through us. But it's what I focus on a lot in the seminars is, Jeff, you said about the freedom to eat what you want isn't just eating all the junk food in the world and drinking all the alcohol. It might do it first, and I often tell that story that's in the book, The Joy of Half a Cookie, where they go to the vending machine, the author goes to the vending machine and has like everything she's ever wanted, and like makes herself, nearly sick from it. But it wears off after like 2 days.
Yeah.
Because it was just that pent up restriction of not allowing any of those foods to a point, and then you get to the weekend or whatever and you overeat like crazy. And it's that perpetual cycle of restriction, which is caused from self-hatred, not from actually wanting to eat better. It's the case of you get to the end of a weekend where you've eaten a lot of high calorie food and you don't really like yourself because of it. And you're like, right, well, that's it. I'm never touching that stuff ever again because I feel fat. I feel gross. I'm such a gluttonous pig. I'm gonna.
And that is emotionally charged language. And when clients, I've got the ladies in my group doing some work on this week. It's about, rather than using such emotive language, I am feeling a bit full. I am feeling a bit bloated. I probably did overdo it. Rather than I'm fat, I'm gross, because that is just, that's just shaming yourself, and it just keeps you stuck. Rather than when you can approach it from a more neutral perspective, you can learn and you can think, that food made me feel a bit bloated. Maybe I need to not eat so much of that next time. Whereas if you're telling yourself you're gross and you're fat and you're bad, you're not learning anything. You're keeping yourself stuck. You're not getting curious about things.
Yes, and it's not just that emotional, it's that emotional wheel again, as you said, Rebecca, because when people say they're feeling fat, it's actually because they're feeling a certain emotion, but they're manifesting it as feeling fat. They might not actually be any fatter or look any bigger.
Yeah.
And what you said there, Rebecca, was really great, that I think we need to reiterate, is the fact of, that I feel bloated because I overate. And too often I see people saying, oh, I'm bloated and I'm sleepy. That food just doesn't agree with me. And it's like, well, actually, it might just be the quantity of your food. Like we all know here, because we're certified, that a feeling of sleepiness after eating is quite normal, particularly if it's quite a heavy, hearty meal. No, but there's nothing wrong with the food. You probably just had too much of quantity.
Yeah.
And that's a very big difference. Yeah. And I think that's something I hammer home a lot again in the seminars, is that difference between good food, bad food, and actually seeing food in a spectrum, giving people the freedom to eat the foods that they want, and then knowing that by doing that, they're going to choose a balance of nutrient-dense foods and other foods because they're going to be truly tuned in. And knowing that eating healthily doesn't mean chicken, sweet potato, and green veg for every meal. It doesn't even need to mean cooking all of your own meals. You just need to have a great awareness, a great understanding. And that does take time to build. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, because of hashtag diet culture and these rules, this plan, people are like, oh, well, I just need to know the exact food to eat.
Yeah.
And when. But it's like, no, actually, what you need to do is put in a lot of hard yards of understanding why you feel that a certain way about food, understanding the habits that have come through years of, underpinning thoughts and practices, and start to unpick them and change them. And sorry, that's going to take some time.
Yeah. And, and what you mentioned there about, like, obviously hashtag diet culture, and everywhere you go, there's these messages. They're literally, you turn the telly on, you listen to the radio, you go everywhere, even listening to my kids doing some of their online lessons. And I'm like, I need to put something over my ears, because I always have a conversation with my kids afterwards because they're like,
God, yeah.
But I think, what my point there is as well is that people will go, oh yeah, it's difficult because, but you've got to remember that those messages have been, and you've mentioned this already, Jonny, they've been kind of hammered home from childhood. My kids are coming home. I mean, we have conversations. We have quite open conversations about this in our house. But they'll come home and they go, oh, my teacher's told me that this is unhealthy and that's healthy, and I should be. And even on the way to school the other day, and one of Leo's friends said to him something about, oh, is this healthy? Is juice healthy or something like that? And he was like, and he's really great because he'll explain it as in, like, well, if you have that all day, then, actually there's no such thing as healthy or unhealthy. All food is just food, and he says this a lot to me, which is great. But what I'm going to say is that that's not the norm, is it?
No.
Normal is like, how can I get my kid to eat well? Or you can't have that because that's not healthy. Or you can only eat that because that is healthy. We're hearing those messages. We're absorbing those messages from childhood. So they are grains. They're kind of, it's like it's stored in our nervous system. You know what I mean?
It's horrific though, isn't it? Because like we've still got newspapers, news articles, TV shows that are like, what's the best diet for weight loss? What's the best diet for human health? And it's like, why are we still creating this content? Why are we still having these conversations? We're asking the wrong questions. Yeah. It's like when people ask the question, well, how many snacks should I eat a day? Or am I, is having 2 lattes a day too much? And you're like, it's the wrong question. Yeah. Because the better question is, how can I stick to better habits, or how can I implement better habits within my life? How can I change my mindset about this food, or how can I implement this today? And I've got a one-to-one client who's he started at like 250 pounds and he's now 195 for like the first time since he was in his teens or something like that. And he's in his early 40s, high-powered corporate job, and everyone's asking him like, okay, what did you do? He's like, oh, you tracked calories, didn't you? And he was like, well, sometimes, yeah, but that's not it. And other people are like, oh, but fasting, you clearly did intermittent fasting. And he's like, well, sometimes I skipped a meal here and there, but I didn't do formal fasting. And what he was trying to get across was like, they're just tools in a toolbox. Yeah. And depending on the context, depending on where you are, you can use different tools. It's just knowing how they fit.
Yeah, and I think as well, I want to come back to kind of, you can use those different tools as well when you have got a good relationship with food as well, because it's really, one thing I really want to point out here is if you've got a poor relationship with food, you know, and you've got attachments, you've got those emotional attachments and all of that, it's hard to kind of, tracking calories, fasting, skipping a meal might trigger you. Yes. Whereas once you've healed your relationship with food, and this is what I always say to clients, once we've done this work, it depending on the client, obviously, of course, but if I've got a client who is, who does need to heal their relationship with food, then it's about, okay, we need to work on this first. Then, dip into that toolbox, because you'll be able to take it for what it is. You won't get so hung up on the fact you didn't track for one day or whatever. You'll be able to take a much more relaxed approach to it, and you won't let it override what your body is actually telling you. Because I think that's, I think sometimes people can think that it's got to be black or white or one way or the other, and it doesn't, does it? But I think, there's just a lot of, and I think as well, what you were mentioning before about, obviously you're talking about the CBT and developing the skills and the awareness and things like that. For me, developing all of that means that you can dip in and out of that toolkit further down the line, because you've got the skills, you've got everything you need to maintain perspective, to know what's going on, to understand what your body is telling you, and to listen to your mind, and to understand what your triggers are, to understand when you're stressed, it's probably not best to do X, Y, Z. Yet, when you're going through a really good patch and things are really good, and do you know what I mean? It's about, once you've got that resilience and that awareness, you can be much, much more flexible with things. And the other thing here as well is and I think that's kind of point that I've touched on there, is that whatever's working for somebody right now might not work for somebody 6 months down the line, might not work for somebody 2 years down the line, because they're going to be at a very different stage in their life. Things are going to look different. So they're going to have to adapt that approach accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to make these connections and ask these questions and get down to the root of these of what's driving different behaviors, different habits, different thoughts, and that kind of thing. And when you do that, then you're able to provide yourself with a number of different tools. And I kind of think about my own way of eating, and the more that over the years that I've connected with things, the more I'm able to understand, okay, I can skip lunch, not because I'm afraid of overeating too many calories, but because I know what I have coming up at dinner. But then I also know that if I completely skip it or don't, or skip all eating for that long period, then I'm going to go into dinner in an uncomfortably hungry state. And so now I know, okay, you know what? I'm not going to completely not eat for that afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and have this kind of a snack in the middle, maybe a protein shake, or maybe some cheese and crackers, or something that will help me get through that day. But it's not, I don't set myself these rigid rules that I need to follow, and that works for me. But for another person, they have to think about how their body responds to this different way of eating as well, and then apply something in that way. And so I think it is good to have just kind of these various tools that we can use for ourselves, but it takes time to develop that. And that's, again, coming back to what kind of diet culture is it typically promotes this one best way, and kind of in quotes, of eating, or the best diet, or the healthiest diet, and it takes the focus off of tuning into how your body responds and how you feel, and it puts it on on this certain rigid path that you're supposed to follow, and then it backfires down the road, because if you're not going based on how it impacts you as an individual.
And I think, experience is also a massive thing that people have to bear in mind. And I'm saying this as somebody, who has struggled with, and I've been honest about it. I did have an eating disorder in my 20s, late teens, in my 20s. And I know now that if I do certain things, they will be triggering. Does that make sense? So I know if I start tracking calories, or if I start, it's happened to me a long time ago. I remember starting to track calories again, and I thought, whoa, hold on a minute here. This is triggering stuff for me. or if I skip meals, it will trigger things for me. So I know I need to consistently stick to a more intuitive approach, you know, because of my experience and because of all of the work I've done to heal my relationship with food. And I know now that if I do try and do any, you know, there are lots of, you know, lots of things that I work with clients on that I know are not going to suit me because of my past. But a lot of my clients don't have my past. A lot of my clients, yes, have got a bad relationship with food and have got some disordered eating patterns going on, but they didn't necessarily suffer the way that I did. So they don't have that all, you know, that experience that, you know, fundamentally it's when you have that experience, when you have that trauma around food, because eating disorders, they create trauma, and that trauma is stored. And I know that if I do certain things, it's going to trigger that trauma.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So I think it's about, and I'm sharing that because I'm saying that however a person may be feeling right now, they also have to bear in mind their experience and their history.
Yes. Yeah. And it's good that you mentioned that, Rebecca, because I think that gets lost a lot in the communications. And you mentioned, Jeff, the whole, like, it has to be one way or the highway. And it absolutely does not. But it doesn't mean that one tool for one person is going to be correct either, based on their back history, based on their experiences, based on their relationship with food or previous events. And all of those things come into play with knowing what's going to be right for that individual. And that's why coaches exist, right? Because trying to unpick that by yourself is a really, really hard landscape, because the internet is a great thing and it's also the worst thing ever invented, because there's so much information out there. You think just between the three of us, right? If the three of us post on our LinkedIn and our Instagram and Facebook at least once daily, and maybe they're cross posts, maybe they're different posts, who knows? I've also got a daily podcast, and then already there you've got four pieces of information there, and maybe across 3 different channels that maybe all be slightly different, right? That's, 16 pieces of information, then across the whole course of a week. That's maths I can't even do off the top of my head. You've got so much information there just from 3 people. Now add that to news stories and people at the office and other things on the internet, mailing lists, and everything else you see on Facebook, and what multi-level marketing scheme is Karen doing this week? And it's so hard for people to unpick all of that and come back to, well, what's going to work for me? And that's where working with professionals comes in.
And the thing is that yeah, exactly that. And I always say people think that they need more knowledge, no. But let's not forget, okay, that a lot of it, it comes down to people think they need to know more without actually letting their experiences and letting their bodies as well and their intuition guide them. Because I do this task, I've done this task, it's from the Intuitive Eating Workbook actually, where I get clients to, when they're struggling with things and they're thinking, why can't I do this? I get them to do the task where you write your name with your non-dominant hand and then your name with your dominant hand.
Right.
And as you can imagine, one's obviously looks normal, one looks like a preschooler's written it. And one thing is that at the end of the day, you have got the same access to the same brain, you've got the same knowledge and awareness, you know exactly how to write the name with your right hand or your left hand, or your dominant or your non-dominant hand, but you'll find it difficult with your non-dominant hand because you haven't got the practice. You've
never done it. Yeah.
And this is the thing, is that people think that, this isn't going to, they constantly think they need more knowledge. How about we just actually take a step back and think, okay, let's listen to what's worked for me in the past, try and take some awareness and knowledge from that, and then try and build something that works for me now. And let's practice it. Let's get good at it, rather than thinking I need to jump onto this and this and this and this because that isn't working. I need to know more information. I think, I'm
really glad you mentioned that. It's the whole, more information isn't the answer. No. It's the application of said information. And
you're so much better than me, Jonny.
No. That analogy of which hand to write with is brilliant, and I'm totally going to steal it from you. And I know that you got it from intuitive eating, so I'll give both of you credit, because it's so key. And the thing is, funny enough, right? I can see it in myself with actions I took around food and exercise for so long until I got help. And until I got certified, and I was like, okay, this is actually what the deal is. And it's the same when people try to grow a business or learn a new skill or a hobby. It's that cliche of there's so many ways to skin a cat, right? Yes. But you're not going to skin that cat if all you're doing is Googling how to skin the cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that you see these conversations a lot, kind of everybody's wanting to optimize the diet. What's the best way to do this? What should I tweak here? What supplements should I take? And all of these things. And it's just the wrong question.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what the optimal diet is. And, this DNA testing and stuff that is kind of promoted where, at some point they probably will get to where they could write down the optimal diet for you as an individual based on your DNA. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to stick to it anyway. So it doesn't even matter whether it's optimal or not. Yeah. And it's the same with exercise. It's the same with eating. You could give me the perfect optimal training program, but if I don't like it and I'm not going to stick to it, it's not optimal for me. So it doesn't matter in that case. And so, it really does come down to really thinking about those things. And
it's great, that, isn't it? It's that whole expression, like, don't confuse what's optimal with what's practical.
Yes,
because like,
all of that. Yeah.
It might be optimal for you to train 5 times a week, but you've got 3 kids, you've got a full-time job, you're starting a side hustle, your grandma's in town, and the gym is 30-minute drive away. Yeah. Okay, right, now we're going to start thinking like maybe actually this week it's going to be about getting out for a few walks and maybe a bike ride if you have the time, but not 5 gym sessions a week with undulating periodization and fully tracked macros and all the rest of it. It's like people care about tracking their macros before they're eating 2 pieces of vegetables a day.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. No, totally. People are missing the wood through the trees, aren't they? Yeah. And sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow, because like me, I'd love to be able to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'd love to be able to do that, and I can't because of the situation that I'm in at the minute. With kids, business, all that kind of stuff. But I know it's not forever. My lifestyle is going to change.
Yeah.
And it's the same for most people. People's lifestyle will change. And it's so funny because actually when people do work out what matters most, and with business, because I help clients like you, Jonny, with business as well as nutrition, when they kind of can figure out what matters most and what they need to focus on, they'll find they've got more time anyway in a headspace.
Yes, because it's identifying priorities and sticking more time there. Yeah. And that's a key thing with this CBT approach again, is this whole, well, what are your values and your priorities? Yeah. And how can we bring the boats alongside with health and fitness rather than conflict them? Because people are like, I don't have the time to exercise because I'm building my business. Okay, well, how can we do both? Like, I don't have time to go to the gym and work out for 90 minutes. It's like, well, who said you had to?
Yeah.
And it's changing the perception of what healthy eating means and what being fit means so that they align with your values. I can't go to the gym because I've got to spend time with the kids. Okay, well, can you take the kids for a bike ride? Yeah, I can do that. Well, that's exercise.
Yeah.
And what I...
Like my kids, we went from,
exactly.
All my kids in it.
And what I hate, sorry, Rebecca, what I hate, just to add to it, is what I hate is personal trainers and fitness coaches in their mid-20s with no kids who are like, we all have the same time in the world. What matters is how you prioritize your time. And it's like, that's fantastic coming from someone who lives in the gym and doesn't have anything else to do in their lives. Whereas someone who is a business owner or, a high-powered CEO or even just middle management and has 2 kids and all these other responsibilities, we can help with time management and we can help with time wasting and things like that. But you've also got to understand that they're not going to, they can't just drop everything and just go to the gym for 2 hours. It's not going to work.
Yeah. No, but what you said there about time management and prioritization is key. Because you will be amazed at what I can cram into a day, Jonny.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, focus work and all of that. Like, absolutely. Like, I'm all for it. But it's just that whole, like, people feel guilty when they see PTs in their mid-20s be like, oh, we've all got the same time in the day. And it's like, well, actually, like, we've got very different values and priorities.
We do have the same time in the day, but we have different priorities taking up those pockets of time.
Yeah.
So,
how do you address that? And is that stuff that you talk about in your corporate talks? How do the attendees kind of respond to that message? Are they surprised? Is it a sense of relief? What have you found?
I think it's more of a sense of relief because when I walk in and I talk about how, look, like, I love drinking craft beer, like just like plenty of other men and women out there, and I love great food, and I talk more about that balance of yeah, we all have the same time of the day. And I do talk about time management hacks because there are plenty of them, like newsfeed eradicators and focusing on one task at a time. And I tie that into the whole idea of nutrition habit building, of focusing on one task at a time, because people try to multitask their nutrition and fitness habits like they try to multitask at work. And it's that whole chase two rabbits, catch neither cliche again of you're just going to be pulled in too many directions. And I try to relate to people so much more in the fact of, I know you've got a lot of different values and priorities pulling your time. So how can you pair them up? How can you maximize the best of both? How can you habit stack? And it's just little tips rather than overhauling someone's life and saying, well, don't watch an hour of TV at night to chill because you should get your workout in instead. It's more of a case of, well, you clearly value that as chill time. Where else might exercise fit? Can you be more productive at work? Can you, again, as I said, pair it with the kids? Mm-hmm. How can you? It's that whole get rid of time wasters and emphasize places where you're more effective with your time and just double down on it. It's the whole focus on that positive aspect.
Yeah, brain dumping's a good one as well.
Yes, I love a good brain dump.
Because you just have all those things swimming around in your head, and it just leads to overwhelm, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think talking about your corporate workshops, Jonny, tell us a little bit more about those. Do you offer them? Do you offer one-offs? Do you offer series of sessions? How is it that you work?
Great question. I offer a kind of initial intro as a one-off. A lot of the time, a lot of people love that just to see what I'm all about and get a feel for my presentation style. Sometimes, depending on what the company want, that might just be my generic intro where it's like, let's talk about what healthy eating actually is. I call it an intro to healthy eating that won't bore you to death, because again, it's that evidence-based humor. It's the what actually matters and bringing it down a peg rather than what's portrayed in diet culture and in the media. And depending on what the company want, I've done ongoing seminars after that in a series of different things. So people want more information on certain areas, or they want information on, as I said, certain diet methods or tools in the toolbox, or let's go into habits and behavior change even more. So we've got that surface level intro seminar. And then if people want a collection of them, I create them bespoke for a lot of people. West Yorkshire Police, I ended up doing 4 or 5, and they were based much more on feedback that I got through sessions. But as someone who's acted, my improvisation skills are decent, and my ability to field questions on the go without losing a train of thought works quite well. So a lot of the time I say, look, hey, I'd love this to be interactive. Throw your questions out at me as they come and go, because you'd rather them be said there than wait till the end, because people might forget them or feel stupid or whatever. And it leads to a much more engaging session where people actually take something away from it. And I always say, I want your staff to feel empowered to actually start making changes, not overwhelmed with information, and not just put to sleep.
I love that point, because it's funny, because obviously I do some workshops, and it's funny because I've been trying to make those a little bit more interactive like that. But I think sometimes it's hard because people do think they're going to come to a workshop and they expect to just go away with a body of information. But like you said, it's often actually having that opportunity to talk about things and to talk things through and to be kind of coached almost, because I can imagine that's kind of how you do it as well. Actually, I think it's more powerful than going, right, this is what it looks like, this is how many, this is, does that make sense? But it's finding that balance, because people's expectations sometimes can be, and I've found that with my workshops, some people love the interactiveness because they love that personalization. Other people just want information,
It's that whole what's that wealth of information going to do you question again, and that's why my intro seminar is very much a breakdown of, let's break down any previous beliefs, and let's challenge thoughts, let's bring in a bit of science as well to back up my claims, and not in a boring way, but in a way of you can trust what I'm saying. Because again, you need that to back yourself up. Otherwise, you're just another charlatan on the internet claiming that carbs are bad when they're not. And so it's that first seminar is very much a case of, let's break down the things that you might know. Let's get all on the same page of what healthy eating actually means, and then let's start to talk about changing habits and behaviors so that you can actually implement that information. And so I talk about relationship with food. I talk about small steps and small changes. And I talk about making lifestyle changes as opposed to quick fixes. And then from there, it's a case of, hey, if you guys want more info, let's dig into these topics in a deeper discussion. And depending on how many people want or whatever, it becomes much more than a bespoke dealing with people and companies.
Yeah, that's a great approach. Great approach. So if anybody's interested in any of that, then of course they can
shoot me a message.
Yeah, definitely. So what are your, Jonny, and I realise we've been talking for quite a while and it's been great, but what are your aspirations then for Next Step Nutrition?
My big, hairy, audacious goal is Next Step Nutrition to be a real driving force behind, as I mentioned, the obesity epidemic in this country. And that's where I wanted to do seminars and workshops for not just businesses, but hopefully for schools and other organizations.
I'm working on that now.
Because we need to start at that source, right? And it's where, as I said, Rebecca, I find it hard to walk the line between talking about weight loss and talking about health and well-being, because I want to help people who are of that overweight ilk, who have got to that stage where they're like, I need to do something now to improve my health long term, and fat loss is the right answer. It's not for someone who, like me, who might feel like they need to be leaner but actually is doing quite fine. It's a case of let's really dig deep into that health aspect. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to do more. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, if somebody is at a point where they are so overweight that it's affecting their health, then it's about, when you're unpicking and digging and trying to find out what's going on there, then you are obviously hopefully going to be changing their behaviours so that they do lose weight and they do lose fat. Sorry. Anyway, carry on. I interrupted you there.
No, it's fine. And that's what I really want. Is my my background is I was a little bit overweight as a teenager, but it was more my parents who were quite overweight and they were business owners. My mum had a really bad, horrific yo-yo dieting past, and my dad unfortunately passed away when I was in my teens because he was overweight and owned his own business, and he put all of his eggs into that work bucket. And so that's my passion, is saying I don't want other families and other people to go through that instance. Mm-hmm. So at the minute, the seminars is my way of reaching more people, because the private work is one-to-one. In the future, I'd love Next Step Nutrition to have fantastic nutrition, not curriculums, I guess, but programs which could reach the masses, but in a very effective way, mm-hmm. so that they could be rolled out for this population and be better than Slimming World and be better than other things like that, and actually make an impact on a larger scale. So that would be an aspiration of mine for sure.
I've just actually, Jeff and I are working on kind of stuff around family nutrition as well. We're doing we're putting together an online course, aren't we, Jeff?
Awesome.
Yeah. But and it's funny actually, because I recently as well I have actually just put together a curriculum, for schools.
Great.
Started to approach some schools. So I've started to do. I recently did some workshops in a college, which was great. Because like you, that's we need to. That's where we need. It's great doing the stuff that we do now, absolutely, because it does filter down. But I think trying to be preventative, I think is isn't it?
100%. Yeah, and you talked about online courses. I've got one as well, which I call the 8 Simple Rules to Lifelong Weight Loss.
Yes,
and it's a habit-based program for that very reason. So it focuses on intuitive and mindful eating principles, and then purposeful, positive habit building, as opposed to tracking calories and things like that. So that was kind of my first step towards reaching people on a larger scale too, outside of the one-to-one.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And can I ask you, Jonny, before we do wrap things up?
Sure.
What would be your top life tip?
Top life tip.
I was not going to go without asking that question.
Top life tip. I think my top life tip would be to try really hard to have fitness fit your life rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
Because so many people, you said, Rebecca, you struggled in the past. I've struggled with different issues in the past around fitness, but they come down to that aspect of trying to force an identity onto yourself that isn't really there, mm-hmm. as opposed to thinking, with my life, my values, my priorities, my hopes, wishes, dreams, and all the things that I love, how can fitness fit my life best, right? And I exercise 3 to 4 times a week. I don't quibble over having a pizza and a beer with my mates. I have food freedom, and it's like I don't have visible abs anymore, but I'm healthy, I'm fit, and I've got a great relationship with food and a great relationship with other people because of that. And that's so much more important than having visible ab tissue. Totally,
absolutely. I'm much happier and healthier with a bit more meat on my bones.
Exactly.
and I think, I think that's absolutely spot on. I think that is. I think just if I could just expand a little bit more, how do people, how do they work out what is important, what their values are?
Writing them down.
Yeah.
It's that idea of, as you said, Rebecca, a brain dump gets things out of your head and onto the page, and then you can start formulating them.
Yeah.
And it's that idea of, we do an exercise called the 5 whys.
That's exactly where I was going with it.
It's like why is that important? And ask that 5 times.
I got Thomas to do. Thomas was on my workshop. I've got another one tonight.
Right.
And if anybody's interested, they can hop on. Just let me know. But yeah, Thomas came on my first workshop in my series. Now he's just said because I did exactly that task with them. Sorry,
exactly. But that's what that is it, isn't it? It's the whole what are you actually trying to achieve, and why is it so important to you? And ask that over and over again, because you've then got to think about what is really important to you. Like, are you wanting to be a great parent? Are you wanting to be great at your business? Are you also wanting to improve your relationship with food? Are you also wanting to feel better within yourself? And it's those kind of values all then create this wheel of importance. And then you can start to think, right, how can I make it, as I said, bring the boats alongside with health and fitness rather than having them compete against each other? How can you pair those things? But it's first defining what health and fitness really means to you too, which is so important.
Yeah, for me, the 5 whys digs down below that surface, because like we said before, I talk about a lot of clients dancing with diets. They're dancing around on the top thinking that the weight loss is the answer. But actually it's digging deep to thinking, okay, why do I want to lose weight? Well, I want to lose weight because I want to feel better. I want to be more confident. I want to have more energy. Well, the weight loss isn't necessarily going to give you those. So how about we focus on what's going to give you those, and the weight loss might happen.
Exactly.
And I love what you mentioned about the priorities, that like a wheel of priorities as well. And I imagine that's something that you look at with clients as well. To know, in terms of, okay, how much of your energy are you focusing right now on that? And how much do you really want to be focusing on that?
Exactly.
Do you not want to be spending like 60, 70% of your time on your families and your relationships rather than worrying about your food?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where are you spending your time versus where do you want to spend it?
Yeah. Sorry, going off on there. But.
Yeah. So that's great. Great stuff. Really enjoyed talking to you. And
thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add on there, Jonny? Because I know we kind of went off on a few tangents, but is there anything else you wanted to let people know about what you're doing? Obviously, you've touched on, I think, quite a few things that you do, but is there anything else you wanted to just...
So nextstepnutrition.co.uk. You can find all the information there. There's a link to the podcast, as I mentioned there, Next Step Espresso, which is a daily shot Monday to Thursday, so just sort of 4 or 5 minutes, and a guest episode on a Friday with that mind of... It's very mindset, behavior based at the moment, and it's about keeping it simple. And I've got information about the one-to-one service, but the corporate wellness seminars as well on nextstepnutrition.co.uk. You just need to scroll down, and then the packages are there, so you can find all the info there. So,
do you want to put them in the comments?
I will do. I can't comment from here, but I'll post it in.
Yeah, you have to do it after.
Yeah, so I'll do it. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add there as well, Jeff? Or
no, just hey, I always love talking to Jonny. I actually got to meet him in person too a couple of years ago, so that was was cool.
I missed that
exactly. Yeah.
Rather. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm hoping to make it back to your part of the world again here too once this pandemic settles down and maybe hang out again.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we're coming to you, Jeff. Just remember that.
That's true. You can. Yes.
Leo is fixated on coming to Texas.
I don't know why, but yeah. I guess you kind of, you love what's not normal to you. I was thinking, why do people want to come here for vacation when you guys have Italy and the UK and France and all this just like right there? And yeah, it's like, yeah, we want to go see New Mexico and the Southwest and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the mind of a 7-year-old.